Hey all, wanted to do a video on something I touched on briefly in the last On the Contrary I did with Alex Baker on Osmo's website. It was the last one or the one before that, I can't remember. But either way, the concept I touched on briefly was the idea of this common strategy that's kind of out there in the DFS world of you want to win an all or nothing strategy. Like you want to take first or last. The prize pools are so top heavy that you're gunning for first, and who cares otherwise. And I was kind of pushing back on that idea of saying, yeah, I mean, I get the logic behind taking the big prize pool down more frequently, but it's also important to keep in mind that you do want to have some equity in the slate where you're getting back a decent amount of money each time, if possible. And so I made this little spreadsheet here to kind of show the math behind what I was getting at. So I just made up a fake tournament here that's pretty typical with a $10 buy-in, 100,000 the first with 150 max entry. So if you were to max enter this, it would cost you $1,500, and if you could employ this first or worse strategy, which I don't think you really could, because all players have some sort of, all reasonable plays have some sort of equity that you expect to get some money back by playing them. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, that you could play this boom or bust max entry GPP strategy. If you did play such a strategy, you would have to win that first place prize money one in every 67 times, one in every 67 slates to break even, right? So you have 67 cracks before you go broke theoretically, or before you start, I mean, obviously you'd be losing money all the way, but you have to take down 1 in 67. That's kind of the odds your strategy is laying you. So if you could somehow employ this strategy and win twice in that 67, the 67 attempts, you're going to have a really good ROI. But again, like someone would have to prove to me that you could even accomplish that. But I think what most people are talking about, and what I was talking about on the show, was that you want to be careful in how much risk you're taking on in relation to the odds of winning that tournament, that specific tournament. And so that's more or less what this second chart is, where I'm calling it equity. We could call it it's not really return on investment, right? I understand the goal is to have a positive ROI over a long period of time, but just stick with me here. So let's say that you get 75% or 50% of your equity back on any specific slate. So now you get, let's do 75% first. You get 1,125 back on your 1,500 buy-in. Well, what does that tell us? Well, now if you check the odds over here in the green column, you only need to win 1 in every 267 times to break even, right? So if you're getting back, a decent amount of your equity every night, and obviously this will ebb and flow, but let's just say this is the strategy you employ, you have, what is that, 5-fold times the amount of times before you have to actually win one of these to break even, because you're consistently getting at least some money back, right? And obviously the less amount equity, the less amount of time, the more you're going to have to win more frequently. But it's still not as bad as just having this boom or bust strategy, right? Because you're going to have to win once in every 67 times. Good luck to you. It's tough to do that. I don't think anyone really can do that. Maybe. And we could define this as, kind of getting to be more practical. Like, let's say we're just going to use ownership percentage. You could use boom or bust or however you do it. Just your projections, ceilings. Maybe use some sort of randomness and then figure it out after you crunch. Who knows? But let's just do ownership percentage. So let's say someone employed a strategy of only rostering players who were less than 10% owned, right? Well, unless the market's way off, which it really hasn't been that far off the last few years, you're taking on a lot of risk. Granted, you will, when you do hit, you're going to be competing against a way less amount of other competitors, but you're also taking on more risk in the amount of times you need to win, right? So you can't just play 2-3% owned players across the board every time unless you have some basis to believe that you're going to win. And let's go down to like 5%, or even so 1 in 70 times, or 10, let's say 15%. Okay, you need to have 1 in 78 times. It doesn't really change it that much from just going all or nothing. So if you are taking that high risk strategy, be sure you know what the tournament odds are laying you before you just go, hey, I'm gonna super fade. Yeah, I'm super fade guy, and I'm gonna fade everybody. Because you might be just funneling money to the other players. And that's not to say that you can't win that way. Of course, we've all seen lineups where they have like a bunch of 0.3% guys somehow, especially in golf, where they take some prize down. But I still don't think that proves anything, right? Like, yeah, okay, well, they're gonna have to win 1 in every 67 times, where we're trying to win 1 in every 200, something like that, 1 in 300, even better. And imagine, let's say, and I don't think you can control, right? Here's another thing with the all or nothing strategy. I don't think you can really control, once you get like a top 10 lineup, whether you can win that or not. So a lot of times it's just like a point or two difference between first place and 10th place. You have no control over whether that bucket goes in or that he holds that putt. So I'm just, I'm not completely pushing back on the idea of the all or nothing strategy. I'm just saying I don't think you have that much control anyways, right? So you might as well take as many cracks at it as you can, which getting money back is what enables you to do that, right? You're really just trying to stay alive to bink a few of these in a year. If you could think about it that way, that might be a little more helpful. And another note here on, this is a generic tournament where I didn't list how much second place gets, third place gets, fourth place gets. If this was a first place 100 and everyone else nothing, now we're gonna change our strategy, and it depends on how many people are in the prize pool and everything. I get that. This is kind of just a general theme for how to go about constructing a typical GPP. But if you have a top heavy tournament, I would argue, or at least you want to think about, that maybe this doesn't change your strategy. It changes how you want to apply your bankroll, right? And these are two different things. So if I'm in like, let's say, a Millie Maker, where it's almost all the money goes to the first, but there's still 100,000 or 200,000 in a second, I don't think I would change my strategy a ton there. I still want to get back a decent amount of equity, although that hasn't been happening recently. But I'm trying to get back as much equity as I can, so I can keep taking these cracks at $1 million, right? And the higher the rake, the more that hurts me. But if you could think of it, you know what? I don't want to. I just won't play it, right? And that's a bankroll decision, which is probably the right one for a lot of people. Instead of going, okay, I'm going to play the Millie Maker and then play this low equity, high reward strategy, and go for the million. It's like, okay, well, guess what? You're going to have to win the millie within 60 to 80 every times you play it. And as we all know, anyone who's ever played the Millie Maker, it's extremely difficult. Guys have been playing years in all of them and have never won, right? So keep that in mind. Where I would say top heavy maybe shouldn't change your strategy as much, although there are small changes you want to make. It should change maybe whether you want to play it or not. What's your bankroll look like, right? But I think that kind of sums up what I'm getting at. I hope this makes sense. So keep that in mind, and if you have any more questions, feel free to ask me. Have a good one.